The term birth warrior can bring up interesting imagery for people depending on their culture, their background, the different experiences that they have had in life. In our society, we tend to think of a warrior in sort of the shadow sense of the term, where we're talking about fighting or conflict. But if we look at the warrior as an archetypal energy, then suddenly the images that we associate with it begin to shift. So if we look at the ancient description of the term warrior, what we see is not just someone who engages in battle with others, but we see a person who also engages in battles with the inner self. So the archetypal warrior is a person who is about the right way to do it, the wrong way to do it, or a story about themselves if their journey plays out in any certain way. So there are many different archetypes at play when we're looking at birth. Pieces of ourselves that step forward in different situations. So if we look at some of the common archetypes of birth, we have the innocent. The innocent is someone who is very hopeful, very trusting, kind of believing it'll all work out if they just believe in birth or trust their bodies or whatever set of assumptions they've put on birth. They've put all of those eggs into one basket, right? Where they believe that if I just do this, this, and this, then I'm going to get the outcome that I want. We also have the orphan archetype that comes up in birth and in birth preparation. And the orphan archetype is sort of jaded, right? They feel let down. They lack trust. Something has happened in their life where they've kind of had this fall from grace and they're no longer that innocent, trusting self, but they actually are in a different, more childlike archetype where they don't trust anybody and they push everybody away. So sometimes we see this archetype play out with people who say, I'm going to completely avoid the medical model. I'm going to give birth unassisted because I don't trust any care providers. And they also might gather with others who have had that fall from innocence. And so they have a shared narrative about birth and about relationships and about trust, and they sort of find a home there. Now, of course, these different archetypes are not bad, they're not wrong, they're actually useful. When we begin a new journey, we always begin in our innocence because it's the innocent who has the trust and really the bravery to say, yes, I'm going to take this on. If we began in our orphan, we would never set foot outside because we would have decided already that it wouldn't work out. And so these archetypes all have useful energies, whether they're adult archetypes or child archetypes. And when we look at the orphan can help us to find discernment, right? When it's in its more mature state, it can help us make decisions where we're doing what needs to be done in the moment versus trying to please someone or trying to fit into a certain method or model, right? Where we can say, okay, you know what, maybe that doesn't quite work for me to put all my eggs in this one basket. Maybe I need to look around a little more and see what else is out there. All right, so we can acknowledge all of these archetypes and see them for what they are, right? See them in their good, see them in their shadow. So the warrior is another archetype that I mentioned. Now, a birth warrior is not a mother who gives birth unmedicated, although it could be. It's not a doula who has never made a mistake, although it could be. It's not your favorite OB-GYN in the city per se, although it could be. So what is it that makes a birth warrior? Like I said, it's that unattachment to outcome. So in our culture right now, we have this interesting dynamic playing out where, because of the uncontrollable nature of birth, we have more of the medical model wanting to control birth as much as they can and eliminate those unknowns, those variables, because it puts them at risk. It puts them at risk emotionally, in their relationship with their clients, with their practice. It puts them at risk, of course, keeping their license, and financially. And so there's a lot at stake that can push the medical model into this orphan archetype, right? Where we're not trusting in the body's ability to give birth, or allowing things to play out, but rather wanting to control it. Now, since this trend has been growing, we also have a reaction. So the medical model has a reaction to the uncontrollable nature of birth. And then the reaction to the medical model's reaction is the natural birth movement, which can get very much into both the innocent and the archetype and the orphan archetypes, where we're saying, just trust your body, just trust birth. Your body was made to do this, all of these sort of cliche expressions that may be true in some instances, but are not always true, and can actually cause damage when they're not true, because they can be taken as promises by those who hear them or read them. All right, so we have the innocent playing out in the natural birth movement, and we have the orphan too, right, where there's a lack of trust in the medical model, and there is avoidance of modern medicine and the things that go along with it. So what if we didn't have to go this way or that way? What if it weren't black and white? What if we didn't have to choose either or? You're either in the medical model or you're in the natural birth camp. But what if there were another way? What if there were the warrior's way, where we weren't attached to the outcome of the birth? We weren't attached to an unmedicated birth, or an out-of-hospital birth, or a vaginal birth, or a spontaneous labor, right? What if we didn't have attachment to those outcomes, but rather we had that warrior's adaptability and flexibility, where we had enough self-love and self-compassion to know that parents giving birth and birth workers supporting them could still be worthy and still be lovable, even if those other things came into play within a birth story that they were part of. What if there were a way where all of that could be on the table, where we know that there's a time and a place for cesarean birth, for induction, for any kind of medical technology that's out there, or really any intervention? I mean, some would say a doula is an intervention, right? What if we had the compassion for ourselves and others to know that there's a time and a place for this, and that we are still worthy of love and support, of our role, of our community, no matter how birth plays out? I wonder, what do you suppose would begin to change in birth in our culture if we had more birth warriors out there supporting birthing families?